So, it looks like everyone's turned on Tom Aspinall this week, and I'm going to give my opinion on it in this video. Many UFC fans have just turned on Tom Aspinall this week following the UFC 3-2-1 eye poke fail committed on Aspinall by Ciryl Gane. Dana White has been very dismissive of the injury in the post-fight press conference, saying Tom didn't want to continue instead of couldn't continue, which I think is really, really weird, like the way he phrased it there. He didn't want to continue instead of couldn't continue. He couldn't continue, he couldn't see. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think Dana White misspeaks a lot. So there's obviously a reason why he decided to use those words there. Let's not forget, he also praised how good Ciryl Gane looked in the fight despite committing a blatant foul. No mention of the foul whatsoever, and then when asked about the foul, it was, who gives a shit? Do you know what I mean? Is that the attitude of someone who's supposed to care about their fighters, care about their roster? I don't think so. And when a reporter asked him about the eye poke and how to prevent them happening in the future, his own words, I don't know, who gives a shit? Again, very dismissive, lack of sympathy. Why is that? Let's think about it. Why is that? Could it be that Tom Aspinall's dad has recently come out and said that after he's fought off his contract, he wants Tom Aspinall to go into boxing because there's more money to be made? And this kind of rings a bell. Where has this happened before? It was against that other guy, wasn't it? Francis Ngannou.
Francis Ngannou.
Francis Ngannou. That's the one. Yeah, I thought this was familiar. Francis Gane wanted to move over to boxing to make more money, and that is basically what started off the hatred for Francis Ngannou by Dana White. And there's a very easy, simple solution to stop this from happening. Pay your fighters more. But Dana White doesn't want to do that. And now it almost seems like he's trying to turn everyone against Tom Aspinall, because he said he didn't even say that. His dad said that. His dad said he wanted him to move over to boxing, and for some reason Dana White is now talking about Tom Aspinall as if he's not as good as he ever was, and that Ciryl Gane was beating him, and he might have been beating him very, very closely in that first round, but a first round is not something to go by for a 5-round fight. I just find it really bizarre. Tom Aspinall's dad's come out and said he wants him to move over to boxing. Poor choice of words? Yeah, probably. Considering what Dana White is like, I wouldn't say something like that. And the whole Ante Delija, he said that he didn't want to fight Ante Delija if he was given a title shot because they're teammates, and he's welcomed Ante Delija into his house. Tom Aspinall, that is. He's welcomed him into his house, and he has a rule. Anyone who steps into his house, he doesn't fight them. Is it crazy to think that Dana White's trying to turn everyone against Tom Aspinall here? In my opinion, not really. It kind of makes sense. At least it makes sense in Dana White's logic. So fans are coming out saying that Ciryl Gane dominated the first round against Tom Aspinall. But let's actually look at the statistics of that round, shall we? So total strikes for Tom Aspinall was 27 out of 39, which is around 69%, whereas Ciryl Gane 30 out of 40, which is 75%. So if you put that on paper, Ciryl Gane outlanded Tom Aspinall by a tiny little fraction, just a few shots. So basically, it's not a fucking domination, is it? And we've got to obviously think about which strikes matter more. So Ciryl Gane's strikes were mainly jabs, a few low kicks, and 1 or 2 hooks, and he stayed on the outside of Tom Aspinall the entire time. Aspinall's strikes were mainly straight right hands, hooks, low kicks, and head kicks. However, in my opinion, it's very obvious looking at the fight. I've watched it back many times. Aspinall was the one pushing the pace and being the aggressor, whereas Gane was staying on the outside, popping out jabs. But the fight was very competitive. Gane only edged it due to a few more jabs than Tom Aspinall, and he landed on Aspinall's nose, which then obviously made it bleed. Because one shot lands on someone's nose and it makes it start to run, it doesn't mean that he's getting beaten up. Yes, there's blood. Yes, there's clearly damage inflicted, but that can happen off of fucking anything. You know, you can flick someone in the nose and it can start running blood. Do you know what I mean? So to say that Ciryl Gane was beating the shit out of Tom Aspinall because he made his nose bleed is a little bit silly. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Tom Aspinall fan. I'm saying this because it's just common sense to me. And there are many people who actually agree with my take, but also there's a lot of people who disagree with my take, which is fine. You're allowed to disagree with takes, but this is just common sense here. You don't win a fight by making someone's nose bleed. The whole narrative that Gane was basically making Tom Aspinall look rubbish in there, it's just wrong. It was a very competitive fight. It was very competitive. So you can't say that Gane absolutely demolished Tom Aspinall because he landed a few more strikes and he made his nose bleed. And that's not the way it works. Let's not forget, we also had, if it wasn't for this eye poke, we would have had 4 more rounds. And I have no doubt whatsoever that Tom Aspinall would have picked the pace up and probably got the finish eventually. So let's talk about the eye poke, shall we? I've actually come to find out that there wasn't just one double eye poke in in the fight, but instead there were multiple attempts to eye poke Tom Aspinall. Aspinall showed Gane the takedown, which Gane stuffed very well, but it is clear that he stretches his fingers out towards Aspinall's eyes the minute that Aspinall tries to take him down. And you can clearly see in this picture here that he's trying to take Gane down, and Gane has his fingers outstretched towards Aspinall's eyes. So the double eye poke wasn't the only poke that he went for in the fight. And a lot of people are giving Gane praise. They're saying, oh wow, Gane was able to stuff the takedown from Tom Aspinall, but he couldn't do it against Jon Jones. In my opinion, I don't think that Tom Aspinall tried his absolute hardest to get that takedown. To me, that takedown looked more like a, look, see, the takedown's here, or I can take you down. Look, just making him think. Do you know what I mean? And this is actually backed up by one of Tom Aspinall's vlogs backstage before the fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov, that Khabib said to Aspinall before the fight to mix up the striking and the takedowns to keep him guessing. Aspinall wasn't really trying very hard, in my opinion, to take Gane down. You can see clear as day he wasn't absolutely trying to rip him up and fucking throw him to the ground. Make him think that the takedown's coming. He was trying to overwhelm him with variety of striking and grappling. And we get on to whether or not the eye poke was intentional or not. Upon researching Gane's past performances, I've come to the realization that he has actually got a tendency to commit fouls in the majority of his performances, and I'm going to go through some of them right now. So in the Tai Tuivasa fight, he puts him down with an intentional back of the head punch. Derek Lewis, he repeatedly hammer fisted him on the back of his head. Junior Dos Santos elbows him in the back of the head. Sergey Spivak, multiple punches to the back of the head. Alexander Volkov clearly got robbed in that fight, but clearly grabs the cage to prevent him from being taken down. And obviously that leads us to the Tom Aspinall fight now, where he just gouged his fucking eyes out. So in my last video, I basically explained how I didn't think that Ciryl Gane poked Aspinall's eyes on purpose. That still could be true. However, looking at his performances in the past and seeing that there is a tendency for him to commit fouls, it definitely doesn't make him look very good, does it? It doesn't paint him in the best light at all. Could he have done it deliberately? Absolutely. It's not outlandish to suggest that this was intentional. And in my opinion, regardless of whether or not it was intentional or not, he should have been disqualified. It was a blatant foul, and it's caused damage to his eyes to the point where he couldn't continue. This should have been a disqualification. This should not have been a no contest. And I've come to a realization as well that eye pokes are actually one of the only fouls in MMA that go unpunished, regardless of how much damage they cause. The same with groin shots, which Gane committed against Jon Jones in the first 15 seconds of their fight, which again went unpunished. So obviously everyone's having this conversation online about, should it have been disqualified? Should we need to change the gloves to stop this from happening? In my opinion, I don't think it's going to stop it from happening. You get fighters throughout their whole career that don't ever get an eye poke foul. They never ever poke anyone in the eyes. But then there are other fighters who always poke people in the eyes. And that is not a coincidence. I don't think it's the gloves. I don't think it's the style of fighting. I think it's the fighters themselves. And clearly Tom Aspinall has become a victim of his own success. He has been so devastating in his fights leading up to now. Round 1 KOs, round 1 TKOs, round 2 submissions, average fight time of 2 minutes. Basically anything less than pure excellence and perfection in the octagon is a loss in the fans' eyes. So I watched a video on Tom Aspinall's channel before the fight. His dad told him to take his time and to enjoy the fight. And in press conferences leading up to the fight, Aspinall jokingly said that he's aiming for a decision. In my opinion, Aspinall may have actually looked less devastating on purpose. He wanted to show everyone that he could go longer than the first round, the 1 or 2 rounds. He wanted to show everyone that he can take his time. He doesn't have to take people down in the first minute or so, otherwise he gasses out. He wanted to put on a good performance, get a good few rounds in to shut the people up who are saying that he's a one-trick pony who's just got power and he just happens to have knocked everyone out. Luckily. Bear in mind as well that he hasn't actually fought for 16 months, which would be crazy to suggest that he had ring rust as well. Hopefully Tom Aspinall's eyes can recover properly and he can get back in there as soon as possible. And they're going to have to be so much more strict on Ciryl Gane this time to not keep his bloody fingers stuck out. We can't have it. Imagine if it happens again. Imagine. That would just be unreal. And at that point, you can't blame Tom Aspinall for anything. I don't want to hear anyone. If that does happen, and Gane does it again, he fails again against Tom Aspinall Aspinall in their rematch. I don't want to hear anyone saying that Tom Aspinall was never as good as people thought he was, because he has a tendency to commit fouls in his fights. So Ariel Helwani had an eye doctor on his show recently to talk about what injury Aspinall may have suffered and how long it would take to heal. He said that he most likely had a corneal abrasion, which can take up to 6 weeks to heal, and the symptoms he has align with the symptoms of a corneal abrasion. Aspinall at this moment still needs to do more testing on the eyes to completely rule out that there hasn't been any damage to the retina, and his dad in his latest video said that he still can't see and Tom is miserable, and I can understand why he's miserable, absolutely. I mean, he's been out of the octagon for about 15-16 months, and for this to happen in his first fight back, and fuck knows what's happened with his eye, if there's any long-term damage. He's had a bloody run of bad luck, hasn't he, Tom Aspinall? And let's just hope he recovers, and I hope that UFC fans can open their eyes, no pun intended, and realise the severity of what happened to him and how unfair they are being, calling him a quitter because he's blind. Are you joking? For saying that he can't see and not being able to continue. Dana White, Chael Sonnen, Anthony Smith all coming out saying that he quit. What the fuck is going on? Do you not have any respect? Do you have not any care for your fighters, for your fellow fighters, your fellow teammates? Like, what's the matter with you? If you poke someone in the eyes, do you really expect him to go and fight 5 rounds against one of the best kickboxers in the world, Ciryl Gane? That's just stupid. And just because people in the past have been poked in the eyes and been able to carry on and continue doesn't mean that Tom Aspinall automatically has to continue and that he hasn't been injured worse than them. And even if people in the past have been injured the exact same as Tom Aspinall was in this fight, it doesn't make it right. So let's say Tom Aspinall did continue and he was blind, because he can't see. Let's say he continues and he carries on fighting Ciryl Gane and he ends up getting knocked out because he can't see him. How is that fair? How is that fair whatsoever? It's not really, is it? To expect him to continue after being blinded is ridiculous. Spreading this narrative that Tom Aspinall quit because he got blinded is unfair, is actually disgraceful. The UFC owes Tom Aspinall a lot. They made him wait for so long to get the Jon Jones fight, and granted that's not all their fault, that's Jon Jones's fault for mucking him around. But the thing is, you owe Tom Aspinall here. He has done so much for your company. He has fought Sergey Pavlovich on 2 weeks' notice and a back injury. He was actually the backup for Stipe and Jon Jones, and he flew out there and was willing to fight on 1 hour's notice if he needed to. He was then delayed by Jon Jones more than a year, and UFC, they owe him a lot for doing this. He's done so much for the company, so to come out and publicly disgrace him and make him out to be a quitter because he couldn't see and he couldn't continue is disgraceful, and the UFC should hang their heads in shame, especially Dana White, because everyone else is just parroting what Dana White says. Dana White says it, so it must be true, right? The same thing happened with Francis Ngannou. He turned on Francis Ngannou because he wanted to move to boxing, and now it's happening again. This is ridiculous. And if any of you guys out there really genuinely think that he should have continued, that he quit, you need to look yourself in the mirror and realise that you're not fucking Dana White, so stop saying everything that he says just because he says it. So yeah, hopefully he recovers well. I was going to make a reaction video this week, but just seeing the absolute ridiculous outrage that I've seen on the internet about Tom Aspinall being a quitter and he should have continued, it's just drove me mad, and I needed to make a video on it because it's crazy. So what do you guys think about my take? Do you agree with it? Do you not? Leave a like on the video, don't forget to subscribe, turn the bell notifications on so you get notified every single time I post a new video, and I will see you guys in the next one.